We cannot defend the federal government poking its nose into what states are doing and putting the thumb on the scale against same-sex couples.
526 days after President Obama made that statement, for the first time ever, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed today to take a serious look at the issue of marriage equality. The court today granted a review of the voter-approved ban on same-sex marriage in California, called Proposition 8, and the Defense of Marriage Act, a federal law that declares marriage is only a legal union between one man and one woman. The Defense of Marriage Act bars the federal government from recognizing the validity of same-sex marriages in states where they are legal under state law. 9 states, Connecticut, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Vermont, and Washington allow same-sex marriage or soon will. So does Washington, D.C. Record lines are expected for those wanting a first-come, first-served seat during the historic Supreme Court proceedings. As NBC's Pete Williams puts it, today's move by the Supreme Court could result in the Roe v. Wade of gay rights. Joining me now is political strategist Steve Elmendorf, chair of the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, and Chris Geidner, senior political reporter for BuzzFeed. Steve, I want to go to you first on this. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth whether it's a good thing for marriage equality for the Supreme Court to take up these issues. Some folks think better to leave it at the state level. There's been a lot of progress there. Are you bullish or bearish on this?
I'm bullish. I think the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing. You know, it's hard to predict, but I think the country has been moving so fast in the right direction. The court is not immune to public opinion. The court's not immune to the winds blowing through the country. And it's so clear where we're moving, and the progress we've made in the last 5 years has been amazing. And I think the court's going to do the right thing.
Chris, let's talk a little bit about public opinion, because we have some polling that shows, breathtaking change of public opinion on this. In 2008, 36% of the country supported same-sex marriage. By this year, 48% support same-sex marriage, 46% oppose it. A split, but a 20% increase almost in 4 years. And I wonder, are we now reaching the point where anybody running for public office is effectively going to have to support same-sex marriage?
Well, I think that it's definitely clear on the Democratic side that when President Obama came out and said that his evolution was complete, that the Democratic Party quickly fell in line. With the Republican Party, clearly there are going to need to be further discussions, and days like today will quicken the pace of those discussions within the party, but they're going to have to make decisions about where they're going to fall on this in history.
And Steve, you are bullish, so this would fit in with that. But it would make sense for this. It would seem as if the court was going to make a sort of landmark ruling in favor of the arc of history and civil rights, given the fact that they're taking up both DOMA and Prop 8. I wonder where you think John Roberts fits into all of this.
Well, it's hard to tell. I got to believe that, based on some of the other decisions he's made, I don't think he's quite as conservative as some people think. I think taking up the DOMA case is really important because we really need to have the Defense of Marriage Act struck down. Marriage in the states is great, but at the end of the day, there's an awful lot of benefits that come from the federal tax code that people who get married need to enjoy if you're going to have a fair and equitable situation in society. So I think they've made a big step forward here. The court's a hard place to read. But unfortunately, it's not like the election. We don't have Nate Silver to read every morning to tell us how it's going to turn out. But we'll all be watching closely.
Chris, there's a third issue that the justices haven't taken up yet, and that's an Arizona law that bars some same-sex spouses from access to state benefits. Where do we go on that? What happens to that issue?
Well, the Arizona case is a case in which the state rescinded domestic partner benefits for state employees, and the same-sex couples who sued said that they don't have the option of marriage in Arizona, and so rescinding the domestic partner benefits was unconstitutional. And they won at the Ninth Circuit at the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court today only announced what cases they're going to take. It's possible that they denied that request by Arizona Governor Jan Brewer to take the case, and if they did that, then they would maintain their benefits and the appeal would be gone. Or the Supreme Court could choose to take the case, to hold the case until they've decided these other issues. We'll find out whether or not they denied the case on Monday, most likely, when the court lists its other orders.
Steve, I want to play a little bit of sound. George Takei was on the show last night, and he was offering his defense of marriage equality. Let's take a listen to that.
The core value of marriage is two people who love each other and who are committed to each other. You want security for your spouse, whatever may happen, and our laws do not provide that. In the case of homophobia, we are literally members of the family. We are sons and daughters of heterosexual parents. We are brothers and sisters. We are literally kin, blood kin, and yet we deny the LGBT member of the family the same legal protections and rights that they enjoy. It's irrational.
Steve, this has been called a gay rights issue, but really it is a civil rights issue. And when you hear an eloquent argument like that from George Takei, it underscores the fact that this is an irrational argument, and it's almost a sort of the inevitable course for the United States. I wonder what you make of, House Republicans who've tried to stand in the way of marriage equality. Do they have a platform to stand on if the Supreme Court decides to, given the fact that the Supreme Court has decided to take up Prop 8 and DOMA?
Well, I think it was very clear from the results of this election that the Republican Party, if they're going to succeed long term, if they're going to get back in the presidential election game, is going to have to change their position on gay marriage. Younger people in particular are it's inevitable. They're moving more and more towards this. And if you listen to Ted Olson, who's a deeply conservative Republican, who was Ronald Reagan's Solicitor General, and you listen to him talk about this issue, and he's going to be one of the people arguing the case, there's a deeply conservative position to be taken here, that two people who love each other, who want to spend their life together, ought to have, no matter what their sexuality, ought to have the same rights as two heterosexual people that want to live together. And that's just a basic fairness. And, conservative Republicans should be for two people who love each other. It's family values that two people who love each other want to be together.
Indeed. It is family values indeed. Steve Elmendorf and Chris Geithner, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Coming up, from now on, Jim DeMint won't just be pushing the Senate to the fringe right. He's going to be pushing his whole party. And Chris Christie goes to Washington to ask for government help while vetoing his own state's moves to support health care reform.